Welcome back, everybody, to the Praying and Slaying podcast. My name is Aaron, your host, and today we have an awesome first mobile hunting, which seems to be becoming a theme, mobile hunting buck from Mr. Hayden Crass, a guy that I found on the Facebook mobile hunting forum, and he smoked an awesome deer for his first deer out of a saddle. I'm still trying to get my first deer out of a saddle, so this buck, boy, it sets my standards high, I'll tell you that. And I'm so excited to get to know Mr. Hayden and learn a little bit about his background, how he got into hunting, all the cool stuff you guys expect to learn from here in a Praying and Slaying episode. And then also hear this awesome story of how he smoked his first buck out of a mobile hunting setup. Let's jump into it with Mr. Hayden Crass and his first mobile hunting buck. The first question I'm going to ask you, I'm a connoisseur of bourbon, I guess I'll put it that way, but I see the wild turkey sign in your background. And I know where that comes from. My uncle had the same thing on his fridge when I was growing up. So what's going on with that? Are you a bourbon guy?
Funny enough, there's a long backstory to this. I am only 19 years old. I'm not old enough to drink, but
Ooh, I asked the wrong question.
um, that sign, I bought it on Facebook Marketplace because I have been living by myself, self-sufficient since I was pretty much just turned 18 in my own house, own property, everything like that. And that was just, I seen it on Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, that looks really cool. And I know, of course, I know what bourbon and stuff is in Kentucky. I've actually gotten to work on a couple of distilleries here in Western Kentucky for some of the work I've done and whatnot through construction. And I just thought it was cool and looked good hanging on the wall. And my girlfriend of 3 years, she moved in with me and she didn't like it in the kitchen anymore. So I stick it in the room with me.
I like it. That's awesome, dude. So, okay, now you just opened a whole can of worms for me. So I'm gonna ask questions, answer what you want to. We can edit out whatever you don't want to.
Oh, that's perfectly fine.
So,
I'm pretty easy to talk to for the most part when it comes to questions.
all right, man, sounds good. So, okay. Well, first of all, awesome that you live in bourbon country and in Kentucky in general. My wife, one of her best friends, is from I don't remember the exact town, so that's bad of me. But she lives not too far from Bardstown, Kentucky, and so we've been to most of the distilleries around there when we've gone in. And Maker's Mark is like I've done the tour and the whole thing, and um, put a stamp on me for being like a bourbon drinker in terms of that. Um, but so you brought up that you've been on your own since 18, and one of the things I like to kind of our goal at Praying and Slaying is like we want to kind of get to know the guest just as much as we want to hear the hunting story. So whatever you're willing to share, dude, I'd love to hear the story about how you kind of ventured out on your own at 18. That's not normal, like in terms of like what I've typically experienced from guests. And if you're willing to share that story, dude, I'd love to hear like kind of how you ventured on your own. Um, you've obviously got your gal with you. You guys are moved in. That whole bit on its own. But like, how did you get on your own at 18? Like, if you don't mind me asking.
Well, that's kind of whenever COVID hit, I was in eighth grade, which sounds crazy because you probably were doing something completely different than that. But I spent the rest of my eighth grade year and majority of my freshman and high school year as an online student. And then I went back to school for the last 9 weeks, I believe, the last semester of my freshman year. I went the whole sophomore year, and at that point, my school and some of the other schools around here have done it. They offered a program where if you would work, I think they said it had to be a minimum of so many hours a week was the stipulation. You could continue to do your school online and work a job during the daytime. That way, if you wanted to work during the daytime, you could. You can just do your school online whenever you had the free time, so to speak, but you still had to have it done by a certain time. So after my sophomore year, which I was born in August, so I was kind of technically a grade behind what I needed to be. When I was a sophomore, I should have been a freshman, just the way my birthday fell for the thing. So I was also a really young sophomore and junior. I graduated at 17, didn't turn 18 until the summer after I graduated high school. But after when I was 15, I started working a full-time job as a laborer for a painter. That's just I knew the guy, and whatnot, and he was nice enough to give me a job, which it didn't pay a whole lot, but as a 15-year-old working full-time, I didn't have any expenses. It paid pretty good. And then I kind of worked my way up to that and kind of became his right hand man after just a year and a half because of just the way people want to work anymore. The people he had hired at the time, they didn't want to work the way I wanted to, and it just kind of it gave me the opportunity to excel in that job. And then my dad at the time, he previously, a couple years prior to that, he opened his own construction business after working for a guy who did some not so great things. Um, so he went ahead and opened his own business, running it full scale, and that's where I decided to change positions to make, more money. That's kind of what I was kind of setting the future up for myself. And and I kind of was fortunate enough that I lived with my parents till I was 18, and we lived out in the county and whatnot from the same time where I grew up, and they decided that they want to move into town because he was always in town for work, whether it be going to Lowe's or somewhere like that, or going to meet with homeowners, you name it. He spent majority of the time in town till 8 o'clock at night, especially, when you live 20 minutes outside of town, it's a drive back and forth constantly. So they bought a
Yeah.
house in town, and I was fortunate enough to be able to pretty much rent this home from them. I pay them whatever the house payment is for that month and insurance and all that. I kind of just go through them as far as the home loan, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty fortunate to get it that way, but I definitely still do pay for it. It's not like they just gave it to me, but it's definitely an experience being 19 and having that much responsibility. It was definitely a lot more than what I was thinking it was when I walked into it.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's a cool story just as much as it is like it's kind of, not the normal story, I guess, so to speak, right? Like, but you know what? Like you had an opportunity to jump into something that's a little bit different than most people get the opportunity. And I think that's an opportunity to tackle. And if you're willing to shoulder that, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah, it was definitely a big, big step. It was a lot more than I was expecting whenever it kind of came down to it, but I'm definitely here for it, I guess you would say.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And then you got your, it sounds like you got your lady living with you. So you, like, I guess if you want to share whatever you want to share about that, like, it's not, gal of 3 years, you've been dating her.
Yeah, I met her before I only had my learner's permit because in Kentucky you can get your learner's permit at 16. You have to go take a test for that. You have it for 6 months. And I had started talking to her through about the end of that 6 months. So right before I had my license, we went on our first date before I ever had my full license to drive by myself. I had to have an adult in the vehicle with me, and we went on a date to the movies. And I asked her to be my girlfriend at the end of it. Funny enough, and
Let's go.
it's been 3 years since then. It's actually our 3 year anniversary coming up, I believe February 6th. So here in just a couple weeks.
Heck yeah.
And she's been living with me for, let's see here, since April, I guess. So a little over 8 months.
Awesome, man. Oh, very cool. And date at the movies, I've always been curious how that goes. Like with my first date at the movies ever was like my my girlfriend at the time had I can't remember what the car was, but long story short, like uh she had a pair of keys that she kept in the ignition at all times because somehow like the vehicle locked them in the ignition, so she could never get them out. Like if you ever want to steal a vehicle, go steal this girl's vehicle. Like, but I remember her spare set of keys that she used to get in. Like we were floating the river one time. I grew up in Iowa, and anyway, we were floating the river. Somehow the spare set of keys got misplaced or floated to the bottom of the Raccoon River. I'm not really sure what happened to them, but they got misplaced. That was the whole thing. But that was the only experience I ever had dating a girl with taking them to a movie. Period. Was that her dad had to come pick her up on Valentine's Day, and I got left and had to walk to her house because her dad was like, "You're going to feel the embarrassment of this one, buddy. You locked her out of her own car." So. Now, good for you to have a girl that movies was the first date, and now you guys are living together.
Well, so, here in our little town, there's only really two things to do here, and one of them's the movies, and the other one's a bowling alley. That's all we have, and either one's kind of an odd one to go on for our first date. So movies it was, and it was, I want to say it was on a Tuesday night or something like that. And there was only one other person in this whole movie theater with us on a Tuesday night at like 9 o'clock, I think. And it was oddly quiet, you know. It was, there wasn't a whole lot of talking to be done. There was a little bit throughout the movie that we talked, but you know, we had been talking back and forth prior about a month to this, so it's not like we were, you know, complete strangers to each other first time we ever met.
That's a good deal, man. Yeah, sounds like you guys got a good thing going. So, like, as far as upbringing goes, like, what got you into hunting? Like, were you myself
Well,
personally? Like, I was like self-involved. I kind of got myself into hunting through like kind of watching hunting TV, and my grandpa had a few hunting stories growing up. But like, I was kind of the hunter in my family. Like, how about you? Like, how did you get into it?
well, it started. I was probably around, I don't know, 5 or 6. I was pretty young, and my grandfather and great grandfather at the time, they coon hunted. You know, where you turn dogs loose at night, you go in there when they tree, you know, shine the light, that kind of thing. That was big when I was young, and that's what we did. That's what originally probably was one of the first things I hunted was coon hunting. And then my grandfather, of course, same one. He was big into deer hunting. He was big into bow hunting way before I was ever born. You know, always, you know, told me stories and stuff. And then he's the one, which my dad was into hunting, but by the time I was old enough to hunt, he was done. He was done hunting with his hunting career. He was more focused on work and stuff like that. He kind of stopped hunting around the time me and my brother were born. Um, Funny enough, he almost missed my brother being born because he was over. If you ever hear of Land Between the Lakes National Forest, that's about 15 minutes away from where I live, about 30 minutes outside the town I live. But he was over there coon hunting at night, and my brother was in the process of being born, and he had to rush back from being over there. Um, but he bow hunted a lot, and he bow hunted over there here at the house. You know, always told me stories and stuff, and he was the first one to take me hunting, so to speak. And that's just from there, it was kind of a obsession. And then my other grandfather, which he served in the military for 27 years.
Okay.
He was in the army for 27 years, but he passed away back during COVID from COVID complications with COVID is what they said. From where he was overseas and around burn pits and stuff like that, and then when he got COVID, it attacked his lungs and whatnot, and so he died from complications of COVID back whenever that was a thing.
Hmm.
But he taught me how to fish and everything I know about fishing to this day. That was his thing. He didn't hunt, but he fished. That's all he ever did. If it was, as long as it wasn't wintertime, which they stayed down in Florida during the wintertime after they retired, they traveled down to Florida and stayed for, you know, 2 months out of the year. And even when he was down there, that's all he did was fish. So I kind of had it from both sides of the family, you know, hunting and fishing, growing up in just the outdoors in general. But the hunting obsession definitely started from a young age.
That's awesome, man. And did you get into like so coon hunting, obviously, but like when did you kind of break that deer hunting side of things? Was that something you got into sitting in a blind, or did you guys dive right into like tree stand? Like what was your break
Well,
into deer hunting?
my I can I know my first ever deer was a doe. I was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 maybe, out of the tree stand. The same tree stand is still on that tree to this day, and my girlfriend killed her first deer out of it this year.
That's awesome.
Um, with the same gun I killed my first deer with, but that that was the first one was a doe, and then it went to a little, maybe it was probably a 5 point, I guess I'd say, little kind of fork horn 5 point. I don't think I have any pictures of it that I just remember it. No pictures were taken because that was kind of right whenever cell phones were becoming really popular for everyone to have like a, you know, a cell phone with a true camera on it, not your flip phone or something like that. And
Yeah.
and then I still have pictures of my first ever memorable buck, and I have its just antlers. I don't have a Euro mount or anything. I just have its antlers sitting on a shelf in the living room. But like I said, since I was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8, I've been into deer hunting, and I've loved it. I remember I got in trouble one time because I had bad grade or something in school, and it had snowed, and I really wanted to go deer hunting, but I got a bad grade, so I couldn't go. That was the stipulation, and I was so upset about that. But it's definitely been an obsession from a young age.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's yeah, for me it was a young age thing as well, but yeah, I kind of got into it like by proxy almost. You know, my grandpa had a set of deer antlers hanging in the garage that he had, or his like hog barn, and he had a couple stories to go with it. But yeah, it was just a young age thing that turned on to me, and got into bows after that and whatever. But um, yeah, it sounds like you had a pretty good upbringing in terms of examples of getting people into it. Now you've got your girl. Did you get your girlfriend into it, or did she kind of like was she
I
already
got
there and you
her
just got
into
her
it.
first year?
She comes from a family of 7 girls. That's all it is. It's just
Oh
all
wow,
girls. So she has a bunch of sisters, but I guess the first year me and her were together, I kind of got her into it, and there was a kind of a bad thing. That same tree stand, she actually killed her deer out of this year. It was kind of, it wasn't a hard rain, but it was enough to get everything wet throughout that morning while we were sitting. And this was before I, of course, had bought her everything because this was our first year together. And she had, which is this ladder stand. It was just a buddy ladder stand, maybe 12 to 15 feet, nothing crazy high up off the ground. And she was about halfway down it, and one of her feet slipped, and she span around off the ladder and fell and landed. And she ended up landing kind of with her feet straight out and landed right on her butt and ended up fracturing her spine. I think it was T11 and T12, maybe something like that. One of the lower parts of her spine, she fractured, and she had to be in a back brace for 3 months after that. So definitely
no kidding.
not a great first hunt for her. It's funny to laugh on it now, kind of looking back, the stories you can tell. But in the moment, as a 16-year-old kid with his girlfriend hunting, and it was a real scary experience.
Yeah, no kidding, dude. I mean, a fraction of hunters ever go through something like that on their own, let alone having somebody they're with. Like that's wild. And so I guess if you don't mind, like, so she fell from the tree stand. Like, what were the next steps after that? Like, do you
I
immediately call nine one
was
one or?
I was still in the tree stand, and of course, this tree stand's only probably, I don't know, 200 yards behind the house where we live. And I was still up there, and I kind of just seen it all happen. It all looked like it happened in slow motion, reliving everything. And I told her just to, sit still. I climbed down, and once I got down, I, asked her, make sure she could feel everything, move her feet, whatnot. And I tried getting her up and walking, and we made it maybe 15 yards before she was just in so much pain that she couldn't even move. So hated to do it, but I leaned her up against a tree, sitting up, and ran back to the house. And of course, at this point, I didn't have a truck. My first car was a 2003 Mustang GT, so I couldn't get a truck back there because we were hunting next to a cattle field. So you can drive a truck up pretty much right next to where we were hunting. So I got my dad, and we went back there and picked her up and whatnot. And I drove her to the hospital in his truck, and her mom and stuff met me there. And yeah, it was definitely a terrifying experience, not only for her, of course, but even for me. It was definitely something that I would not want anybody to have to go through.
Yeah, no kidding, man. That's wild. And like I said, most people, when they're out hunting, they're worried about like solo things that could happen, and then you have something happen to somebody you're hunting with, like that's a whole nother ball game. All of a sudden switching the gear from like, okay, how do I take care of myself to how do I take care of this person and meet their immediate needs and get them help. That's crazy, dude. And he's stuck with hunting after that. That's even a little bit more crazy. Like, I don't know if my wife, if that would have been her experience, I don't know that she'd still be hunting, to be honest. Like, how'd she stick with hunting after that?
She was definitely still eager to go, but she was definitely really nervous about ever getting a tree stand, which after that happened, I told her, I said I wouldn't put her back in one. And we hunted out of a ground blind somewhere else for the next year after that. She only went with them maybe a couple times, kind of easing back into it. I definitely didn't force it on her or anything. I left it up to her whether she wanted to go or not. And of course, after that, it made her always really worried whenever I went by myself. But after after last year and then coming into this hunting season, which I had switched how I was hunting. This was my first year out of a saddle. And then even before that, I'd always hunted out of, just your regular old either buddy tree stand or ground blind. I never hunted out of what you call either like a lock on or anything like that. Something where you don't have any sort of like a safety bar or anything like that. Something a little higher off the ground. Um, so the last 2 years, I've started kind of hunting out of stuff more like that. And I had a one year like just normal tree stand safety harnesses, and I took her with me, and she wanted to go, so I put her in the harness and stuff, and I used my saddle right next to it. Had her climb up after I was already up, and made sure she was harnessed in and whatnot. And then it came down to rifle season, and I told her, I said, so we have two options. We can either go over here, which is where she fell the first time she ever went, and there's a good chance we'll see something, or I said, or we can go over here and sit in a ground blind where there's a chance we most likely won't see anything, but there's, it's that time of year, there's a chance something could come by. And she said, well, we'll go over here to that tree stand. And lucky enough, we hadn't been sitting there maybe 45 minutes. It was probably only 3:30, 3:45. And a buck came through chasing a doe, and she almost didn't want to kill it because it wasn't quite big enough, because she kind of has the same standards as me, wants that 120, 130-inch deer. And I was like, for your first deer, especially after going through all that, this is a great deer, which it was only maybe a 70, 80-inch 5 point, nothing crazy. But I told her, I said, you're shooting that deer. And then she was really happy once she did. She got the enjoyment out of it that I was hoping she did.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. And it's a, like, I'm assuming bow that she shot it with?
No, that was rifle season. That was actually the
Rifle.
opening weekend of rifle season, because she I had not gotten her a bow yet. I bought her a crossbow, and she hunted with it some early season, but I had not bought her an actual bow yet, just because of the fact I want to make sure something she really wants to stick with before I invest the money into a good bow for her to use.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's an investment for sure. But that's cool. Either way, first deer is first deer. My wife's first deer was the rifle as well, and we'd taken her out. We grew up in Iowa. Took her out bow hunting in Iowa a couple of times, and I wasn't there to see it, but we were in tree stands separated by 80, probably 80 yards as a crow flies, and she came to full draw on her first buck ever, and it pinned her up in the tree as soon as she came to full draw, and she couldn't, pull the shot off, and she was kind of hooked on hunting after that. Like that was kind of the first time she'd ever really been like, okay, I get why you go out here. But then it took us all the way to get stationed in Montana, where we went out, and she was kind of, or her and I both had licenses, and we'd never hunted in Montana. It's our first hunt. And anyway, long story short, she ended up getting a deer with her 270. And that was kind of all she wrote. She was kind of hooked on it after that. So that's awesome. I mean, either way, no matter how you get a deer or get someone into it, I think if they're going to like it, that first deer is going to make or break their experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, don't get me wrong, I think she gets an enjoyment out of going, and of course, after her first year, I think she definitely understands the excitement and reason behind it. But to be honest, I think she enjoys coming and watching me more than she does actually going for herself.
Yeah, no, I can definitely get that. So what got you into obviously you guys tree stand hunting was a thing, and then you moved into mobile hunting. Like what'd you get into like the saddle hunting experience for?
Well, I've always wanted to go over to Land Between the Lakes National Forest and hunt. Like I mentioned earlier, it's only about 15, 20 minutes from where I live, not a very far drive. And the Kentucky side of it, because it goes through Kentucky and Tennessee, I think the Kentucky side has like 160,000 acres of huntable land, and Tennessee has like another 50 or 60,000, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a lot of public land, and it is hard hunting. It's a different style of hunting because it's a national forest. It's not like what you're used to over in the county here, where you have these deer that see people every day on these cattle farms, or farmers out on their ag lands, or anything like that. Or there's not no corn pile in sight for 20 miles, and it's some of these deer will never see a human in their life. It's a lot harder of a hunting. It was more of a bucket list thing for me. And the past 2 years, I've been kind of doing it. And I hung a tree stand over there before, and I got to hunt out of it twice. I think after I put in all the work to go over there and hang it, it just wasn't very convenient. Well, then I got on Facebook Marketplace scrolling one day, and I bought a climber. Well, I came home, kind of played with it, and then I went over there during the summertime to scout because deer season comes in September 6th for archery, I believe, here in Kentucky. And I was kind of scouting that early season, and I found a really good spot. Had a picture of a really big deer, several really big deer, but one really big deer, big mainframe 8 with a good sized drop tine. Because there's really big deer over there. It's just they're hard to hunt. You can sit for days and never see a deer. It's just that kind of place. And there was not a single place around there that I could get a climber into and actually make a hunt. And after I finally did a lot of research, and I of course had seen people, like the hunting public and stuff, hunting out of a saddle. Saddles have been around for a couple of years, and I've seen them, people using them and stuff. And it really piqued my interest. So I started doing a lot of research, and I kind of got into more of the budget friendly. I believe I ordered the Hawk Helium 2.0s or something like that off of Midway USA. I got those on a really good deal. And then I went with the XOP Mondo saddle and platform kit, which was only like $199. So all in, I think I was around $350, which is, not that much for a saddle when you get to looking at all the prices for them. So
For sure, yeah.
um, got it in the mail, everything, started playing with it, and turned out I really liked it. And I've even used it here on my own property quite a bit. Just, whenever I brought her with me for if I was sitting in a single set tree stand and I'd climb up next to her. And even during the rut, the thing is, all the deer where I was hunting, they were coming from behind me, and I couldn't get a shot here on our private land. So I took my saddle with me, and I climbed in right at daylight, and there was a deer. It was just a doe standing 40 yards from me in this field feeding around. And I climbed up that tree, hanging sticks and everything, right at daylight, and this deer never even knew I was there. 40 yards, this deer was standing there, never had a clue. It just shows how quiet and whatnot a saddle can be, and efficient you can be with one of those if you really
Yeah.
want to be. But like I said, it was a bucket list thing for me to go over to Land Between the Lakes National Forest and kill a deer. Still have yet to accomplish the buck part of that. I drew a quota tag for over there for their rifle hunt. They have 2 3-day rifle hunts that you quota hunt. You pay your $10. You get put in. If you get drawn, you get to go for your 3-day rifle hunt. I ended up using that for a doe over there because I never did see a buck. But it was getting late in the season. It was right about the time, I say late in the season, September 6th through till gun season. When it comes in on like November 12th, it feels like you've been hunting for a long time.
For sure.
I'd yet to kill my buck, and this guy who lives down the road, he's got about 300 acres worth of land. He's an old cattle farmer. But I always knew he had somebody who paid to hunt there, but I only ever seen him in one spot on one side of the road because he owns land on both sides of the road. And I only ever seen him there for that first full week of gun season. So I stopped and talked to him, and they were from New Jersey, and they only hunt the first full week of gun season. They pay him to come hunt the first full week of gun season, and he was nice enough to give me permission. He said after they get done with that first full week of gun season, you're more welcome to come out there and hunt. So I went in that first morning after I got permission, and I was looking for a place to set up. I knew where I had seen deer crossing back and forth, from property to property and whatnot, and kind of knew the general area I wanted to go. And it was getting about daylight, and I got to where I thought I wanted to be set up, and I was looking for trees. And funny enough, from a distance, I was about 75 yards away. I was like, that looks like a tree that's, close enough to where I want to be, that has, cover enough around me to keep me covered, but still has open enough for me to shoot where I want to shoot. And lo and behold, I get all the way up to that tree, and the tree right next to it has a buddy stand hanging in it from where they hunt.
Oh
So
no.
I ended up sitting there for my first morning sit in their little buddy stand that was already there, just to kind of observe, because that's the first time I ever hunted on that property. And fortunate enough to see a lot of deer. And I kept seeing where they were coming from, where they were coming from. They were all kind of dodging me out at, 65, 70 yards, just right there past where you can shoot. And at this point, I was only after a buck, really. I'd done killed some does from the year, and whatnot. But I was after a buck, and I'd been seeing a really big buck, and I actually seen him up close in person one time. And he is probably 160-inch 10 point this year. And if I'm not mistaken, I seen him the same deer the other morning on my way to work, and it was still dark. And I got a really good close look at him, and he's done made it through all the hunting seasons except for the last 2 weeks of archery here. But he is a absolute giant deer that most people consider once in a lifetime deer.
Yeah.
He's a huge deer, and that's actually the deer I was in there after. I ended up not being able to kill him, but finally figured out where these deer were coming from. Started inching in closer and closer to where I thought they kept coming from, where I thought they kept coming from. So I go to set up one morning with my saddle stuff on my backpack. I get to where I want to walk down into the woods at next to this field, and there's 8 sets of eyeballs staring at me at 20 yards away.
Oh no.
And I was thinking, oh, I done messed up. I've came in too far, pushed them around. And I got very fortunate. I got up in a tree. Only ended up seeing 2 more does that morning. I was done kicking myself in the butt thinking I messed up this whole spot. And then I went back that same afternoon, and the way this all lays out, there's the main cattle field up here at the top, and then you have about maybe a 70-yard strip of woods that's all on a downhill slope that leads into this bottom where there's about maybe a 0.2 acre lower bottom field that's been, looks like it was overgrown at one point and been bush hogged, and it's still kind of thick, but bush hogged all to the ground. And that's what I'd set up on, where I'd bump those does. So I sat back up there that afternoon, same spot, and the way it worked, that bottom came back up to a ridge on the other side, and here came a pretty good size 6-pointer. He's real wide. He's just a 6-pointer, real wide, but he skirted me at like 60 yards. I seen where he crossed. Well, then 30 minutes goes by, a spike comes through. It's the exact same path. I mean, to a T, the exact same path. Skirted me at 60 yards. So after that afternoon, I went back for one more morning sit there in that same spot, and I climbed down from that morning sit, and I seen exactly where those deer were coming through. So at 9:30, after I climbed down, I had made up my mind I was gonna move over to that ridge and find a tree that put me within shootable distance of where all those deer were crossing. And I got up there, and I kind of seen where there was a hole in the fence that they were just walking through this hole in the fence. They didn't have to jump it. There's this fence line ran all the way up and down there because it was just a divider for the cattle. It was still the same property, just a divider for the cattle.
Mm-hmm.
So all these deer had to do was just, step right underneath this fence, and they were coming through where they wanted to go through. It was just a highway of deer movement right there. And I set up probably 40 yards from it, maybe 20 yards from where I thought my expected shot would be, and hunted that afternoon. I didn't end up seeing anything. So I went back the next morning, because I only get to hunt primarily the weekends, of course, with work and whatnot. But
Yeah.
hunted that next morning, and hadn't seen anything. And it was probably 7:30, and I'm sitting there scrolling on my phone in a saddle. Kind of, you can sway back and forth a little bit. You can be comfortable and move around. And I'm sitting there, and I look up from my phone, and here comes this deer, and all I see is antlers at about 40 yards away, and he steps through that fence. And so I go ahead and grab my bow because I have the tree in front of me with the saddle. I always try and put the tree in front of me or, kind of at an angle in front of me. That way I can shoot mainly to my left because that's my dominant side shot. I try and put whatever
Yeah.
I'm going to be shooting at to my left-ish side. And so I could kind of hide behind the tree and get my stuff ready while waiting for him. And I already had my yardages figured out of what I wanted to do. And there was this really big oak tree. I mean, actually, huge oak tree between me and where he should have walked. That would have gave me time to draw back and give me a perfect 20-yard shot, broadside, everything. Well, that deer does not decide to do that. He decided to come between me and that big oak tree at 10 yards.
Oh no.
So, I'm freaking out at that point because I was like, I can either draw back and possibly scare this deer or, draw back and everything will go perfectly fine. I draw back. He looks, right up at me, stares at me, and I send one right through him. And it was, that's definitely the closest shot I've ever had on a deer. It felt like after I got down on the ground and picked up my arrow because it went right through him and stuck in the ground, I could almost reach out and feel like I could almost reach out and touch the tree that I was sitting up in from where the arrow was stuck in the ground. It was a experience for sure to kill one at that close.
That's
And
wild, man.
he ran. I actually have a video, but the first thing I did the moment I shot, I hung my bow back up and grabbed my phone out of my pocket from where I was just scrolling on my phone, and I put it on video and I recorded him. He ran 30 yards and stood there and wobbled and crashed, and then he fell over on the ground. And from just the pure adrenaline he had, he landed right next to a tree. He picked his head up and was swinging his head back and forth, banging it against this big oak tree. And it was in the video, you can just hear how loud his antlers are smacking against that tree. And it sounds ridiculous, but just the pure coolness of getting to shoot one not only at 10 yards, but see it only go that far and get to watch it crash and die right there and have that feeling of accomplishment it's definitely, especially when it comes together exactly how you thought it would. It crossed right where you thought it would. It was taking the path you exactly thought it did. It was definitely a hunt to remember.
Yeah, man, I'd say that's incredible, dude. And then, like you said, you kind of had it pictured out, picture perfect was if it would have gone behind that big oak tree, but it didn't. And you still had, the wherewithal to make it all happen. And it's not very often, like you said, we get a number one, get one that close. That's pretty incredible. And I think that, the whole mobile hunting mentality from what I've gathered, I've done it a handful of years now, probably three or four. But I still have yet to get my first deer out of a saddle. But I've gotten a couple out of a climber, and that's kind of been my transition is from climber to saddle hunting. But the idea is that you can get in so much closer, and you kind of talked about it too when you had your the doe that you set up. You basically set up with her at a certain distance, and she kind of lets you do what you were going to do because of how quiet it is and stealthy. The closest I've gotten out of a saddle was setting up in a tree stand, very similar to kind of sounds like what you experienced. And I got up, I got all set up, and the only thing I hadn't finished was my bow was on the ground. And at that point, I just happened to look over in the creek that I was setting up over, and there was a fork-horn buck that legal buck. I would have absolutely shot him to get my first deer out of a saddle. And he was there at probably 10, 15 yards, and my bow was on the ground. I'm like, what do you do? Like they're like, okay, I guess I'll let you walk off. And but it was crazy because what dawned on me was the same thing as like when he let me set up, there's no way he wasn't in my proximity to me setting up. And
Yeah.
he let me kind of do my thing or whatever that noise that's associated with that versus maybe some other things. It just didn't spook him. Like he just stuck in his area and he did his thing. And that's wild. But then to have your first saddle hunting experience to be at 10 yards is pretty wild. And on a buck, and it's a nice buck too. Is it 8 point or is it a 10 point? I couldn't really tell from
He
the picture.
he is in 8 point. Um this farm produces really big deer. I actually ended up getting the farmer asked me to come back and do some coyote hunting. And through my time coyote hunting, he has, a big, probably 2 acre pond that's back in the timber. And it had some ducks in it. So I called and asked him, would you care if I ever duck hunted that pond? I don't duck hunt much, maybe a couple times a year, because here in Kentucky you don't get a whole lot of ducks. There's definitely some ducks to be killed if you have the place, but if you don't have the place, you're kind of just out of luck. And we went in the dark that morning to duck hunt, and this big 2 acre pond, it has a real like muddy part on it from where it's just kind of filled in over the years. It wasn't wet, it was just mud, some muck. And shine a flashlight, and there was just a school plate left of the dead head, I guess, of where a deer had ran to water to die, and nobody ever found it. But this was just a regular 8-point, nothing non-typical about it, as mainframe 8-point as you can get. And I brought it home and taped it out to 123-inch 8-point, just a
Wow.
mainframe 123-inch 8-point. I think it had like a 20-inch spread on it. And then, of course, that big 10-point I was actually in there after, run out of season on top of that. I knew it was going to be a hard fetch to ever kill that deer. But you could, that 10-point I'm talking about, you could fit a full-size beach ball inside his rack and it not touch a single bit of antler.
Wow.
I mean, it's up and out, and it looks like something you'd see in a magazine. But that 8-pointer I killed, of course, first buck out of a saddle. It's only my second ever archery buck. But he was a 100-inch 8-point. He was like 98 and some change, but that's me doing it. So take that for what it's worth. I'm no deer scorer. I just can kind of use an online chart to go for the best I can do.
Yeah, exactly right. He's a stud of a deer, dude. I tell you what, if you walk by my tree, I'm looking at the picture now here on Facebook, and if he walked by my tree, he'd be in trouble. So I think you did good. And then like you said, all the firsts that come with it, and having your own permission to be able to hunt this property and everything else, like it's a heck of a buck to be taken. So out of your experience tree or saddle hunting, now that you've got a buck out of it, like, I guess give us your best tips and tricks as far as getting into saddle. I know in that mobile saddle hunters community that I found your post in, everybody's always asking, tips and tricks, and people are just getting into it and whatever. Like, what have you learned doing the saddle hunting that you would pass on to the next guy trying to get into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an up and coming, different style of hunting that a lot of people are starting to move to because of how, not necessarily to say superior it is, but, you try and climb in a, metal buddy stand or even single ladder stand, the amount of creaks and squeals it has, or if, you're trying to use a climber, it's heavy, it's big, don't get me wrong, it's great for if you're going to sit a really long time, you want to be comfortable, but you just can't beat the mobility of a saddle. And it's I'm gonna say it's probably not the most comfortable, but they say try so many different saddles and you'll find one that is comfortable that you can sit all day. And as much as I'd like to spend that much money, that's a big ask to spend that much money on that many different saddles because they can get really pricey. And I would say probably the more expensive, they're definitely worth it. But for the $200 I spent on that XOP Mondo and platform combo, I couldn't have asked for something, better, more quality. I mean, it's really high quality products at a really good price from that company. XOP Outdoors makes what it seems like to be really quality stuff, and they do have some of the higher end stuff if you want to go that route too. But I would definitely say, put in your practice at home and practice shooting from it in a tree at a target, before you ever go out. I mean, I spent, a month playing with it before I ever even went on a hunt, which of course I ordered mine in the middle of summer. So I had plenty of time to practice it before season ever came around. But it's definitely a learning curve. You're going to feel a little awkward at first, and you definitely have to put trust into your equipment. Cause I mean, you're sitting there, whether you're climbing up with your lineman's rope or you're using your actual tether and you're on your platform, you're sitting there, putting all of your body weight and trust into a rope. That's kind of what you kind of have to look at it like. And it's definitely a little bit, not necessarily nerve wracking at first, but if it's not something you're comfortable with from the get go, you're probably going to be a little nervous when you get up there and, start doing it. But it's definitely worth it. It's worth the try.
In the woods or on the water, it's the small details that dictate success or failure. A ruined diaphragm call or a lost fly isn't just a nuisance, it's a blown opportunity. You spend thousands on the hunt, don't lose it because you didn't protect your tools. Puck Outdoors has solved this with their 100% made in the USA modular twist lock storage systems. For hunters, the Puck keeps your elk and turkey mouth calls protected, organized, and dry, and ready to run. No more warped reeds, searching through pockets, junk drawers, or the truck floorboards. For fishermen, the fishing Puck features a magnetic tray and 4 modular compartments to keep your hooks, flies, and weights locked down in exactly where you need them. It's compact, it's rugged, and it's built to keep your most critical gear in peak condition season after season. The best part is they fit right in your pocket, your bino harness, or your fishing vest. Don't let poor organization be the reason you come home empty-handed. Go to puckoutdoors.com and use code PRAYIN and SLAYIN to get yours. That's code PRAYIN and SLAYIN to save 10%. Protect your calls, secure your tackle. Puck in, pack out. We've all been there. You're 6 hours into a sit and the buck you're after is nowhere in sight. Your knees are absolutely barking against the bark of that tree. Most hunters just suck it up until they can't take it anymore, and then they head for the truck. But you can't fill a tag from the couch. Comfort isn't a luxury, it's a tactical advantage that keeps you in the game longer. That's why you need the knee bag by Light to Fire Outdoors. This isn't some cheap foam pad. It's a patent-pending bead-filled design that actually molds to your knees and supports your hips. It's built from ultra-tough, weatherproof Cordura. It won't soak up water or gain weight when the weather turns sideways. It features padded wings that cradle your knees and even has MOLLE attachments for your thermocell or other pouches and gear. It's 100% made in the USA, handmade by veterans, so you know you're supporting an awesome cause every single time you get in the tree. The best part, it's a multi-season tool. Strap it to your body for saddle hunting or mount it to the tree trunk as a knee pad, or when rifle season hits, turn it sideways. It becomes a rock-solid 15-inch tree-mounted shooting bag for those precision shots out of a saddle. Whether you want coyote tan or mossy oak bottomland, this is gear that evolves with your hunt. Stop fighting your gear and start focusing on the hunt. Get yours at www.prayinandslayin.com and use my code PRAYIN10 to get free shipping on your order. You can also hit the link in the show notes. The knee bag, comfort evolved. Stay steady, stay ready. This episode is powered by Dead Nuts Outdoors, makers of the most lifelike, lightweight, and weatherproof 2D archery targets in the world. That's right, I said 2D. We're talking full-size animals that bring the hunt to your backyard. Whether you're dialing in before the season or just burning daylight with your bow, Dead Nuts Targets makes practicing fun, training on full-size animals to ensure every rep in the backyard converts to success on your trips to the field. Built to last, easy to haul, compatible with any backstop, and 100% made in the USA, Dead Nuts Outdoors is a proud supporter of our veterans, investing in conservation and rooted in building a better, more confident community of hunters every step of the way. They are proud supporters of the Prayin' and Slayin' podcast network, and you can get 10% off your Dead Nuts targets by using the code Prayin' and Slayin' at checkout. That's Prayin' and Slayin' at your checkout or visiting the link in the show notes. Dead Nuts is helping us all hit the spot, not the dot. Hit it, Dead Nuts. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, no, I everything you said, I totally agree with, man. It's kind of wild to get into, especially moving from like a stand. I went from traditional stands to climbers, climber, and that takes its own level of comfortability. But at the end of the day, you're kind of like, when you're set up, it's a lot, basically exactly the same as sitting in a buddy stand or whatever, just kind of a solo version. But then moving into the mobile world, it was like, the biggest thing is getting comfortable with the concept of exactly what you said. You got to just trust the gear is going to work and do what it's going to do. And I guess kind of what gave me the confidence to get into it was when we moved to our house in Maryland, when we were stationed there for 2 years. The very first thing the homeowner that we were renting from had to do was like remove 2 or 3 trees out of the backyard for his like homeowners insurance reasons. And they had a crew of dudes that came out, and all they were doing is running up and down those trees. I watched them for 2 or 3 days in a row, and they're in ropes and saddles, dude. And they're just like whipping around and swinging from tree to tree and just doing these crazy acrobatics. And you're like, holy crap. Like, and that's, their business. So they do it every single day. And then kind of knowing the saddle world was out there, kind of like you, like it'd been around for a couple of years when I first dove into it. And then I just happened to know a couple of guys that knew like, hey, if you're going to buy something, my biggest thing was like trying to navigate the hurdle of give me a list of every single thing that I need to go out and do this, instead of like when you go buy a climber, you buy a stand. And
Yeah.
when you get out there, you know exactly what there is. There's an instruction manual. You've got everything you need. The mobile hunting world, it was like saddle hunting world of the mobile world. It was like I felt like you could find, a saddle that you may like, but then you've got to navigate all these other terms like aiders and ropes and sticks and all these different things that, like, if you don't know what you're talking about, you really don't even know what they're referring to. And so I just felt like kind of naked to the whole environment. And I just happened to have a buddy who um, was able to say, "Hey, man, here's a set of everything you need," and like, done. Like, go climb a tree tomorrow with it. I was like, okay, cool. So, but yeah, getting comfortable with it. I remember my first couple of times, to your point, I got mine about June, I think, and climbed all summer with it. And my goal was same thing. Like every day I'd go out and I'd climb 2 sticks high, climb down, climb 2 sticks high, climb down, and I like extended up to 4 sticks. And then shoot from it was a whole nother world, because then you got to like, yeah, when you get up there, you're holding onto the tree like it's a roller coaster,
Yeah.
and then finally letting go of that. And then you're just like, okay, I'm trusting this rope to hold me. And now I've got to use my other hands and my brain to do something totally different. It's a wild world to get into. And then to move on to the space where you're actually shooting a deer out of. I haven't navigated that yet, but I finally just got out for the first time here. We're in Texas now. Went out here this last Sunday and with a guy that was going to do some saddle hunting on Fort Hood, and I was actually surprised. I did it in Maryland. Never even saw a deer while I was saddle hunting in Maryland, but I got comfortable with it there. And then here in Texas, climbing my first tree, it was kind of just like, okay, I've done this before. Like nothing was foreign to me. I climbed a difficult tree and I had to kind of navigate some obstacles and different things. And it was just like, I guess, kind of like climbing an old tree stand. I felt like I knew what I was doing, which was surprising to me, because I kind of thought it would almost be like breaking in all over again. Like, okay, what do I do now? And how do I do this? And whatever. So,
Yeah, it's definitely a learning curve. It's a lot to take in that first couple times, but with some help from YouTube, of course. I did a
yeah.
lot of research and, figuring out not only what do I need, but what is the bare essentials as far as, what I need and what are the best brands for, just getting into it. Cause, when you start looking at, I'm not throwing shade or anything, because like I said, I'm sure they're worth it. You get on Tether's website and you start seeing, just the saddle by itself for $400, you're freaking out. And then, climbing sticks are, another $300. You get more into your saddle than you do your bow if you're not careful. And
Yeah.
so I did my plenty of research and stuff. I got lucky enough. Like I said, I got the XOP Mondo and platform kit for like $200. I think the Hawk Helium Gen 2 sticks for like another $150 or something like that on sale at Midway USA. And I was fortunate enough to get the dump pouches for it, which are another thing you would definitely need. If you go into that without those, you're going to be struggling. The only thing I would definitely invest in that I have not invested in yet, but I'd like to, would be get one of the what is it, a Kong duck or whatever they call that. It pretty much makes your tether and stuff adjustable without having to use the I can't remember the name of that knot, but the adjustable knot. It
Yeah. The
pretty much
Prusik knot.
Prusik
Yep.
knot. There you go. That's the name of it, and it makes it adjustable without having to use a Prusik knot. You can just pull it and it'll pull it tight. You push the little button, it loosens it up. That would definitely be a lot handier for at least your lineman's rope, as far as that would be. That would be one thing I would probably recommend somebody to invest in, would be one of those. Um, Aiders, if you're into like getting really high, aiders would be a big thing. You can definitely make your own aiders. I've seen many videos of people making their own aiders out of paracord. I've seen the ones where, people one stick and have the 3-step aiders on the bottom of their one stick, and they're climbing up a tree with just that. Um, just with my 4 sticks and my platform, I can be at head height around 22, 23 feet. So feet height, 18 to 16 feet. But I mean, in most cases, if your head height's at 22 feet, you're plenty high to get the job done.
Yeah, man, for sure. And that's kind of where I'm at too. Like, interesting you mentioned that, because when we went to this place on Fort Hood that we went, The tree that I picked kind of seemed like an obvious choice, I guess, of like it wasn't a perfect like straight up and down tree to go up and down, but it had a few branches you had to navigate. But overall, like up till the tree forked, it seemed like a pretty solid option. But when I climbed it, I was 2 sticks in, and I'm like, I put my third stick on, I tied it in, and then I climbed up that, and I was like, I was at the fork, and I'm like head height at the fork. But then my shooting lanes, when I started looking at it, I'm like, well, it's a pin or a live oak, so all the branches are like almost like a willow tree, right? Like they all kind of nosedive down, and like if I were to navigate kind of the mobile hunter's mentality of get as high as you can, I could have gotten higher, but then it's like I'm going to be shooting through these like situations where I can't visualize it till I get up that high. So do I want to spend the extra time and navigate this tree up and down, or do I want to kind of pick my height where I'm at? And so I end up going way lower. Well, like long story short, I'm the way this like creek dove down where this tree was growing out of this creek bottom, like this dry creek bed, and then the ground that we ideally would have been shooting at, pretty much eye level with the animal. Like it was kind of almost a mute point to climb this tree at the end of the day. But like but the mobile hunting situation allows you to be behind the tree, so you're still camouflaged. Like the deer doesn't know you're there as long as you can make a smooth draw and kind of navigate around the tree. You're probably fine. But the
Give
guy
you a
that I
lot
was
more
with,
options.
a lot more options. Exactly. If you were to do it with the tree stand, like you're either dead nuts facing them at eye level or behind the tree at eye level, and have to figure out how to turn it 180 degrees to shoot it, get a shot, I guess. But the
I got
buddy
a,
that
I
I
got
was
a,
with,
I got a good story that goes along with what you're saying. It was actually that quota hunt I went on in LBO with for rifle land between the Lakes National Forest. I was fortunate enough to get drawn this year. I went over there and I was telling you about how I harvested that doe. Well, I went in that first day. It was a 3-day hunt. The first afternoon, because I worked on Friday, I was lucky enough to go that Friday afternoon. I already had the spot picked out that I wanted to go. I went and sat up on the ground. I seen one little spike. That's all I seen that afternoon. Went back in the next morning, sat up that morning in the same spot on the ground. Ended up not seeing anything, and I was like, I could have sworn I kept hearing stuff walking kind of behind me because I was watching this kind of creek bed that led into what looked like a great bedding area for deer, and I kind of seen some deer sign. And of course, the hoof prints running in and out of there. So I was like, they got to be crossing right here. But I kept hearing stuff walking behind me. I could have sworn it. Never could see it because I was sitting on the ground. So I backed up to where I thought I heard, the stuff walking. And there was a group of cedar trees there. And these aren't your normal cedar trees where they're thick, full from top to bottom. These were the kind of cedar trees that they had a competition in the forest, so they grew at the top, not necessarily the bottom. They just had a bunch of dead branches around the bottom. So I had gotten my saddle stuff for that afternoon and went back in there early and had climbed up only about 2 sticks, but there was a hill behind me because I came down off the ridge down to the bottom. So my back was pretty much would have been body level at about 15 yards behind me. It's kind of the way it worked out. And in front of me, it kind of dropped down just a hair more. So from the ground in front of me, I was maybe 12 feet up from the ground behind me. I was exactly eye level. Watched a couple does feed through there where I thought I'd heard stuff walking. So I'm sure I had heard stuff walking that morning before, and I just could never see it. But came down to that last afternoon, I had heard something behind me when I was sitting in the saddle. So whatever it is, it's eye level behind me. So I'm thinking it's a squirrel. I turn around and look, and there's a doe feeding on acorns 15 yards behind me, directly at eye level. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get the gun and pretty much kind of crouch down in the saddle and make a full 180 turn and make a shot on this doe at 15 yards. And it's crazy how much movement and motion and silence you can get away with being in a saddle, and how little you have to get up off the ground in some scenarios, and to still be able to make it work and hide from these deer.
yeah, man, 100%. And it's because that was kind of the thing I was trying to navigate too, is like, okay, yeah, you start playing the scenarios once you get your platform set and where you're at. Like I'm swinging around to the left side of the tree, the right side of the tree, excuse me, and trying to figure out like what my options are and how much noise is it going to make, and my platform's creaking different to either side. But then once you kind of break it in, it's like you said, it's almost the swing of the ropes. As long as you're not crackling on it, well, like the tree bark or whatever, you can get away with a lot more movement than you can in a tree stand, and you're not worried about the stand portion of it making some noise. And yeah, I'm convinced it's probably like the best way to hunt, just having tried it and getting out there and doing it. And then to your point, like, the amount of money you got to spend to get into it, that's another big thing you see in these forums is like, guys putting their kits together and like, oh, it's going to be this much of an investment. Like, do I want to break that threshold? And you're like, there's ways to get into it. And I don't know. I'm not totally sold yet on the concept that like more expensive is more comfortable. I think it's just kind of like, how comfortable are you with the concept of climbing that tree in general? Get into it and exactly kind of what you talked about a little bit, like get into it for whatever your budget allows, and then just get comfortable with the whole concept of it, because it's just so much different than getting into anything else. So like if your budget allows you to get into a $600 setup, great, get into a $600 setup and see if you're comfortable climbing and hanging from the tree and doing all these things. If it's $250, get into it for $250 and try to figure that out, because it's just I don't know that it's for everybody, but if you can get comfortable with the concept of hanging from the tree and trusting a rope to hold all your weight and do the swinging and whatever and shoot from like a monkey from a tree, dude, it's a pretty solid way of hunting, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's definitely, in my opinion, like you said, it's definitely one of the more superior ways to, hunt whitetail, and them have no clue you're there. I've gone from hunting mainly on the weekends, just in the mornings, because, if I'm hunting over in LBL and having to walk a mile in to, where I put this tree stand, and having to walk a mile back out, I'm done for the day. This mobile saddle hunting, I can pick a spot any day and go anywhere and walk however far I want to. It just, I think in total, I did the math on it, I had like 11 pounds on my back,
Oh,
including everything. So you hardly feel it's there, and you're just, if something doesn't work out that morning, you can change that spot and go to somewhere else that afternoon, or like in my case, I kept seeing these deer coming out of this bottom, and I couldn't figure out where exactly they were coming from. And I got down in there, and I was able to set up and witness a little more piece of information. Then I was able to move on that piece of information. That's what led me to be able to kill that deer. Is there was definitely no way I would have been able to do that without hunting from a saddle, because there was no tree in there to get into in a climber of any sort, or without putting in a full size tree stand that would have disturbed their area. And that's one of the beauties of this farm that I got that permission on, was there's someone across the road who owns 700 acres that hunts, and he definitely puts the money into the deer herd and stuff like that, and does all the hard part. And then the neighboring property right there, they have somebody who definitely has the money to manage the deer and stuff like that. And I'm kind of sandwiched just between the two, and they only get pressured that one full first week out of the year. And other than that, they're just in their natural habitat. They don't have to worry about anything on that property. So if you can get in there undetected, you got a perfect way to hunt them.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, then you can make those micro movements without having to really disturb anything, and or in midday too, right? Like you get into most stand sets, especially a fixed stand, you're kind of stuck with where you're hunting. But if you get in there and notice that, hey, dude, I'm 80 yards off of where I need to be because of how the deer are moving, climb down when the deer aren't there and move over and call it a day. Like it's pretty neat. And once you've done it, like I said, if you're comfortable with the concept of hanging from the tree by a rope, um, yeah, it's become, for me too, it's become kind of like the go-to way of hunting. Like I don't know why I do it anywhere else. And I still have my climber stand. I'm excited to use that when I can. But yeah, saddle hunting seems to be the way to go. Um, if you had to like say, so for, I guess for you, you're hunting private, you do hunt some public, like what's one or a couple pieces of hunting gear you won't leave the house without?
Uh, Honestly, besides just the saddle, I don't carry that much stuff with me. I've kind of dropped the bino harness and binos and stuff because where I hunt, if you're in the woods, you can see, if you're looking 100 yards through the woods with a set of binos, you're just getting a bunch of limbs.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see for sure. If I was hunting out west or like you said, out in Texas where you have a little bit more open plains in some places, it would definitely be worth it. And the only thing I really carry in me with the woods is I have my backpack that holds my saddle stuff and whatnot, my bow, my rangefinder, my release. I'm pretty minimalistic as far as that goes. If it's the rut, I might bring a grunt call with me if I use it or not. But as far as bringing a whole lot of stuff that I just can't live without with me, I don't have a whole lot that I bring in. I'm a pretty minimalistic hunter. It's not that I don't have the stuff to bring with me. I just choose not to bring it because it seems like every time I bring it, I don't use it.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. And, just this hearing you say that too, I was like, I thought I was going in fairly minimalistic on this last saddle hunt I went on here in Texas. And, I brought my backpack, but I had a couple scent sprays, for killing my scent when I get to tree stand because I wasn't sure like how far we'd be hiking before, building up body sweat and things like that. And then I had some camera equipment and I had my backpack and some other different things. And dude, the other problem with it is you get out there and with mobile hunting, the cool part is you can literally pick like any tree based off your setup. The problem with that is you can pick any tree. So like when you get up there, I didn't have a hook for my backpack and I needed one. So I had to end up like jerry rigging this thing to like a couple tree limbs that if I had to be flat honest, I would have much rather taken my hacksaw and just cut them off. But I'm like, I got to leave them here because I need to hang my bag from them to get my bag off of me because otherwise the cedar tree behind me is going to be making all kinds of noise when I'm moving around or trying to swing, but snagging my backpack. And then if I hung my backpack or my bow on either side of the tree, it was in my shooting lane. It's a whole scenario. So I'm right there with you, dude. I actually like that advice that go in as like the idea of mobile hunting is like minimalistic also. Like just get in there with the bare bones of equipment you can get in with. Climb a tree with your bow, hang out and let it rip, dude. Like if you can
Yeah,
avoid the extra hassle of extra other stuff, it actually helps because you just don't know you're not always in total control of what your tree is going to be like and what setup options you're going to have.
yeah. I mean, I've climbed trees. I hate to say it, I've climbed trees that are about 6 inches around, and if it starts that wind blowing, you're up there and you're just kind of swaying with the wind. The one thing I
Yeah.
can say that I always try and keep extra of is, you ran into that scenario. You didn't have an extra hook for your bag. I always try and keep at least one extra in my dump pouches, even if I don't ever use it. I always try and keep one in there because if I don't remember to put one in my backpack or I take it out and I use it somewhere and I don't pull it down with me, if I plan on going back there, I just leave it. There's a lot of different scenarios that if I'm not careful, I'll end up without one. So I always try and keep an extra one in my dump pouch for that. That way, worst comes to worst, I always have one. Other than that, like I said, nothing. Just my backpack. I did one time when I was on that quota hunt over in Land Between the Lakes. Um, I forgot. I had done dropped something, so I had to climb down and get it. I finally came back up and I had my backpack with me, and I forgot a hook to hang it on. So in that dead cedar tree, I was like, I'll just hang it on this little short, 3 inch limb. Well, I hang it on that little 3 inch limb, and it sits there for forever. And I go to get something out of it, and it snaps and breaks. So I have to climb back down, pick it back up,
Well,
and whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely always a good idea to keep at least one extra, if not more than one hook, just because you'll never know when you're going to need it or find something to use it for.
yeah, man, for sure. Hooks, I would say would always be good to keep extra of. And like you said, a lot of your pouches and stuff have like little extra pockets or even toss it in the bottom of it, when you get done doing your ropes or whatever, have it there. Definitely worth having it because the time you need it is the time you wish you had it. Um, but yeah, man, no, that's super cool. And I'm stoked for you. You got an awesome buck there. I'm still striving to get my first deer in the mobile hunting setup. But one of the things we always do too here on the Praying and Slaying podcast is ask the guest to leave us with something good, man. Like, what's something you feel like the world needs to hear more of they don't hear enough of now?
Oh, let's see here. I guess I'd have to say that, just be happy in what you have and what you get to do in this life, because there's definitely people who don't get to have some of the experiences, as at least from what I've seen, some of the experiences I have, it's limited to the people who get to see that. Be grateful for what experiences you do get to have, whether it be able to be, hunting or whatever the case may be. Definitely be grateful to be able to do that and go out and either, have the funding to hunt, or, having the know-how or whatever it may be. It's definitely something to be grateful for. And, that's one thing I'm always grateful to be able to do, is hunt and get out there and just get to do one thing that I truly love and enjoy to do, is spend time out there. Whether I'm actually seeing anything or not, I'm happy to always be out there.
Yeah, man, 100%. And, I think I love that. And I think a lot of it, I don't, I think that's powerful in today's day and age more than ever, because the hardest part about living, whether you kind of like we talked about at the very beginning here in the outdoors industry, or just being a guy that maybe does something totally different, but you post your stuff on the Mobiles Hunters Forum or whatever on Facebook. Like, we live in a day and age where everybody posts everything. And so it's easy to get caught up. And coming from a guy who spent, almost 15 years now in the outdoors world, it's like, dude, if you're not hunting, like, it is like the weirdest feeling in the world, because all the algorithm is like constantly just funneling you all these like glory stories and this big buck and this and that, and this guy's been out hunting 180 days already and you haven't gotten a chance to hunt your first time yet. But being grateful for that time you've had, and that's so powerful. And I think it's needed now more than ever too, to be able to just sit in your reality and say, okay, like, I get to go out and maybe I get to hunt 1 or 2 days this year, and that's awesome. Like, enjoy the crap out of those 1 or 2 days, and maybe you get something, maybe you don't. But just because Hayden smashed this awesome 8 point out of his mobile hunting setup, and you didn't, doesn't mean that you don't get to be grateful for that one time you do go get to climb a tree this year. And I'm that guy this year. Actually, I climbed a tree one time. I've been out twice this season. I've been out once in a stand out of a high fence ranch here in Texas, and didn't get anything. Nothing that I had on my shoot list came out to the feeder. So it's not always guaranteed in those situations. But then I got to go climb a tree and just sit there and watch the sunset and watch the world go to sleep for a night. And that was honestly probably a needed thing for me to exactly what you just said, is just get a chance to be like, man, I haven't got a chance to get out at all. And I got to go out one time, and it's just, I'm going to enjoy the crap out of this, whatever this turns into. I love that, man. I think that's extremely powerful. Just in a day and age where everything's comparison, because we have so much access to everybody else's glory stories online, enjoy what you have, and understand that's your reality, and just relish in it, man, because that's what your life is all about.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not hard to get caught up in seeing what everybody else posts on, social media, whether it be a TV network, a YouTube channel, or whatnot. You see all these people with success, but you gotta step back and look at it. It's like, you don't live the same life they do, and there's people who don't get to live the same life you do, and they sit there and look at you, whether you post your life on social media, if you just make a single Facebook post like what I had done, you know, there's people who's like, dang, I wish I could have been in his shoes for that day, and it's definitely something I've done before, sit there and try my hardest to do everything I can, and kind of not necessarily worry myself to death, but get upset at myself for not doing good, or killing a deer, or seeing a deer, this, that, and the other. But what I've come to definitely realize more this year than previous years, it's more about just being able to be out there for me than it is anything. 2025 was definitely a good year for me. I was able to get my first turkey after trying since I was, that 7 or 8 years old. My grandfather always took me turkey hunting and stuff. For finally able to get my first turkey after 10 years of trying. Got that first deer out of a saddle, my second ever archery buck. After going through some ups and downs with archery hunting, I was able to borrow a friend's bow for my first ever time archery hunting, after always wanting to get into it from a younger age. I was fortunate enough when I was 16, he let me borrow his old bow after he had upgraded. On my first hunt out with it, I was able to shoot a yearling doe. I was more excited than ever. And then that same week, I got off work early and came home to go hunting, and I was able to tag my first ever archery buck all in the same week with a buddy's bow. And definitely, according to what everybody had told me, and of course it all makes sense, I was definitely very fortunate. And then I went on a 2-year dry spell for deer, besides, just does. And after getting into mobile saddle hunting this year, being able to make it happen was definitely a dream come true. But yeah, it's definitely, this year has been a year of me realizing, to be happy that I do get to hunt and get out there. And like you said, you watch that sunset and the world go to sleep. I've watched, throughout the years, a bunch of mornings of, sunrises and sunsets and all this, that, and the other, and listening to turkeys gobble all morning. It's something to be grateful to even get to experience, because I know there's people out there who would either love to experience or just don't get to experience it. So I'm definitely taking each time I go out um, more thankful. So
Yeah, man, 100%. It's a wild thing, and I think that's the thing to keep it hard is that your experience in doing it is what you want of it and what you make of it at the same time. And you can sit back and watch and let everybody else tell you what it's supposed to be via social media posts or whatever. But your experience is just as important. And it's almost like when I first got into hunting, whatever, probably early 2000s, I guess. But still kind of like pre-social media, in a little bit of a sense. Like I think MySpace was there, but like people weren't really like posting all their hunts and stuff or whatever. But yeah, getting out there. And I remember the very first time I had a high school girlfriend and met her for lunch after I killed my biggest archery buck to date. I was just on cloud nine, but this is before anybody knows anything about it. And I remember going to lunch and she had some of her friends there and like, wait, like people actually hunt? Like that's a real thing, You're like, yeah, a little bit, dude. Like, but it's just like this whole different world that it almost makes you wish you could go back to that time where it's just like, dude, I can kind of live in my own space and do it for my own reasons and whatever. But yeah, having the mental fortitude to be able to make that happen for yourself and understand you're in it for your reasons. And if you want to post it, great. If not, but living by everybody else's, expectations or standards. And the other thing that gets me too is like, dudes posting a picture of a deer and it's like it's not the biggest butt or
that's, I can't.
I could have held out butt and you're like, dude, don't even like if you had to lead with that, don't post it. But
That's
also like, dude, congrats, like high five, man, let's go, like good
that's
job.
my biggest pet peeve is whenever people get on Facebook and they'll, and it's, I don't shame people for whatever size deer they shoot, but I've always grown up with people around me who hunted, because I had other extended family that hunted too. And you always hear them say, well, if I hadn't shot him, the neighbors would have shot him. So I just went ahead and that was one of my
Yeah.
biggest pet peeves is, that, or, well, it isn't the biggest, but it'll fill the freezer. I'm like, I never understood that mentality. And I don't hate on people for, them killing what they want to be happy with, but you can't get on there and come up with excuses for it to make a social media post about it. If you're happy with it, be happy with it. Don't make an excuse to justify it.
Yeah, well, exactly right. And nothing knocking your deer at all here, but like your post, that's actually what kind of caught my eye as part of it. I look at the buck and I'm like, awesome buck, dude, nice job. And then I see the like your description. I've got it pulled up here. It's like my first buck out of a saddle, shot him at 10 yards. He only went about 30 yards and crashed. Like, dude, that is the post that like it doesn't matter what deer you smoke, dude. Like I want to see that. Like what happened, how'd it go? I can get an image in my mind just reading your one sentence of words about what just happened, and that's what gets me excited to be like on these like hunting forums and anything else is just like, dude, like you almost get hearing hunting stories, like you get to live in that. And then when you grow up and if you get a chance to go to like hunting camp or whatever, is like listen to the guys who've been doing it for years talk about their hunting stories and this and that. Like all you have is your imagination to kind of tell you what happened with their words. I think that's the best place to live in it because it allows hunting to kind of live up to the hype that it really is when you're in the woods. It's like this situation led up to this very specific set of circumstances, and it was go time. And that I was ready to harvest a deer, man, and that's how it played out. And I don't think it gets any better than that, to be honest. And I like the thing I miss the most, to be honest, like here in Texas and Maryland, we were there for, we were stationed in Montana, and that's like, I have got a whole bunch of videos of all my hunts, and I'm going to label it whenever I get the time to edit it out and put it on YouTube as like the Montana dream season, because like for 5 years in Montana, dude, like you got a pocket full of tags, you got a rifle and a bow in your hand, and you just head out into the wilderness and make it happen. Like crazy, just the crazy. It's a sportsman's paradise for sure.
Yeah,
But then we go to
for
Maryland. Oh, dude, it's just wild. And then you go to Montana or Maryland, then it's kind of back to like, you got your tags, you got your license, you got your whatever. You get out there and you try to make it happen, and it's all public land. I got one deer there, and then here in Texas, it's just like the thing I miss the most, to be flat honest, after going after, somewhere like Montana, where you're just fortunate to have literally like 10 tags in your pocket and anything walks out, let's go. Is the meat processing part. Like I look at my freezer every time I open it, I'm like, this sucks, dude. Like I've got to go to the store and buy hamburger again, because we're out of hamburger, and instead of just being able to like load the freezer full of meat. So like I'm honestly missing my like deer processing little factory I set up in the fall more than anything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I had no idea what your podcast or whole thing was before you had reached out to me. And once you had reached out to me, I started, listening to the majority of the podcast. And, I will say you've definitely gotten to do some things that most people can, not say they have, like, the pronghorn hunts, the, elk hunts, stuff like that, stuff that most people dream to go on. And that's definitely something I want to work towards, one day, is having a chance to get out there and hunt those kind of things. But you've definitely done some hunts, and I've gotten to listen to a bunch of your stories, not only your stories, but the people that you've talked to and, had on your podcast stories tell great stories and the meanings behind them. And not only just the meanings behind their stories, but the meanings behind what they, the foundations they work for, or, whatever it may be. There's definitely a lot of good to be had in the community, even though there is some that, there's some evil that gets in the community for some reason. People want to hate and whatnot, but it definitely leads back to what I said. Just be grateful for what you can, what you're able to do, and whatnot. Be grateful for having the opportunities to do some of the smaller things. If you only get to kill one deer, one doe a season, that's something to be grateful for, because there's that one person who only got to hunt one time that year and didn't get to see anything. That's there's so many different ends of the spectrum to it. And like I said, 2025 was a really good year for me personally. And, it is definitely something to be grateful for, no matter what your scenario is as your hunting season, however it goes.
Yeah, man. No, I couldn't agree more, and I love that. And yeah, it's the Praying and Slaying podcast. That's what it's about: building a hunting community and learning from everybody and everybody's experiences, and hopefully get to be just better people and better hunters because of it. And but I know one of the things we had talked about kind of on the early side of this podcast too is you're looking into maybe like filming your hunts and get into that. Is there any place like people can come, like, I guess, check out Hayden Crass, like on YouTube, or you getting into that world, or what's your goals there, or where can people find out more from you?
The YouTube thing is definitely a further kind of dream down the line that I plan on doing. It's not something I've started in yet. As far as social media posts and stuff like that goes, I've posted some stuff on, TikTok. I've got I'd say a decent following, 600 followers isn't much, but for only doing it for one season, I'm not upset about it, because as you were saying, it's going to come in its due time, whatever. I don't have a whole lot of TikTok posts. I don't post a whole lot of me in them, just more of like the raw content of the wilderness, so to speak, or, trying to get, interaction in the comment section, stuff like that. And some of them have done really well, but the TikTok account would be Full Draw Kentucky, just one full thing. It's nothing crazy. There's maybe a handful of posts on there, but it's just, like I said, it's something I'm kind of dipping my feet into the water, just kind of something for me to do for fun in my my free time and whatnot. So it's something, like I said, I want to work to more in the future, and potentially get into the YouTube side of it and just post what I get to do and how I get to hunt, and share that with people, because that's definitely one of the things that got me more into hunting as I got older and, was, watching TV and YouTube and whatnot growing up. The hunting side definitely, the more I watched, the more I got into it and the more I dreamed about one day either, having somebody end up the same way I did, maybe, hunted some or a lot growing up, and whatnot, but it definitely drove me to want more than just, hunt the opening weekend of rifle season or, a couple weekends in rifle season. There's a lot more that comes behind that.
Yeah, man. No, 100%, dude. That's exactly where I grew up too. Like I said, I was kind of kind of got myself into hunting for the most part, on my own. But 100% of that, I would say, was due to me running across the hunting channel. My parents, got whatever their first Dish Network subscription was, and ran across the hunting channel. And every night, I could have probably told you if you would have asked me 10, 20 years ago, whatever it was, like I could have probably told you the layout of the hunting programs on every night of the week at 7, 8 or 7 p.m. It's going to be this, 8 p.m. It's going to be that, 9 p.m. Like, I lived by it, but that's kind of where like you said, there's a lot of hunting education that was there. And, you understand the basics of hunting, whether it be turkey or deer or, elk or, for me, my bucket list thing for the longest time was pronghorn. I don't know why I thought that was so cool when you'd watch guys hunt pronghorn on late night hunting TV, but for some reason that got my trigger fired, and that was one of the coolest things. I got a chance to hunt in Montana and Wyoming and whatever. But yeah, man, no, I think I love it. Full Draw Kentucky on TikTok right now. Is that across Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook as well, or is it
No,
just
that
TikTok?
it's only on TikTok. Like I said, it's just something I do more for fun, for personal consumption of time, I guess you would say. But definitely something.
Yeah,
It's more of a trial run kind of thing. Just kind of play with it and see what works, what doesn't on there. And then, of course, future on down the line, I'd like to get into YouTube because I spend majority of my year out in the woods doing something for hunting season, whether it be from late July getting ready for deer season or come, early March, I'm getting ready for turkey season, finding spots to turkey hunt, and then in between I have duck season, which I don't really duck hunt all that much. This is definitely my first year of truly duck hunting. I've kind of duck hunted a little bit in previous years, but this is definitely my first real year of getting into it. So there's so much hunting to be done here in Kentucky. You got deer, turkey, squirrel, rabbit, dove. Have not gotten into dove hunting yet. Definitely something I do want to do. Just haven't really made the time for it, of course. So, but there's just so much to be showed and learned, and not only the fact that I want to bring the more realistic aspect to it of the working person getting out there and hunting and spending their extra free time, like what you always hear about, instead of because they don't get the opportunity really to share that side of it. Everybody always sees the high end side of it, the people who get to do it for a living. And don't get me wrong, if you get to do it for a living, it's a full-time job. I understand that, but it's just not realistic for everybody else. And if you can, in my opinion, match what everybody else goes through and share that sense of symbolism with everybody, I feel like it could definitely reach a big crowd at some point. And that's one of the things that makes me want to do it is, show the real truth to what hunting is like, not only here in Kentucky, but for people across the working man across the U.S. who, spends what free time they do have going through it and trying their best to do the best. It's definitely a lot of work, during the summertime when I get off work, I'll go to Land Between the Lakes National Forest and I'll walk 4 or 5 miles in the afternoon after working all day. It's just one of those things that I do. When you got that much land you can cover, you kind of have to learn it and look for it.
yeah, man, absolutely. And like you said, there's just it's a different lifestyle no matter kind of whatever level you're into it, you kind of evolve almost into a different lifestyle with it. But I think the thing we all settle in at the end of the day is that we're all sportsmen. We all have that drive or that calling inside of us to get out there and experience the wilderness, whatever level that gets to. If you want to turn it into a business for yourself, great, have at it. If you want to just do the raw enjoyment of it, I honestly think that blue collar level of getting the chance to spend your free time there, that's truly free time where you truly get to enjoy it, and it's not some business, or you're not worried about getting some, some sponsor, some content, or some, whatever, the blue collar level of just getting out there and just hunting for the sake of hunting, I think is where the magic happens. And I think we all start there, and then it just elevates to whatever level you want to get it to. But either way, man, hopefully we can, get you some more followers on TikTok there. I'm personally not on TikTok. I need to figure that situation out. I'm still doing the Instagram, Facebook, old fashioned stuff, but either way, Full Draw Kentucky on TikTok, and you're smashing deer out of your mobile saddle. You got your first buck ever out of there, and dude, we're looking forward to following you on more. And I think we're going to have you back on if you're okay with it about that. I want to hear that first turkey after your 10-year journey to smack your first turkey with your grandpa. It sounds like we definitely need to hear that story here for a turkey episode.
Yeah, for sure. I would be more than happy to come back on. Like I said, once you reached out to me, I was really excited and, couldn't wait for the day to come. But I got a lot of stories like that. It seems like I have a bunch more of fail stories than I do success stories, but that's what makes you a hunter. So
That's exactly right. Heck yeah, man. Well, we'll definitely get you back on. We'll schedule a turkey episode because I definitely want to hear that story. And man, I just thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story about who you are and what got you into hunting. And of course, your awesome 8-point buck here. And on the podcast episode, I try to link to certain things. So we'll make sure we link to the post of his buck here, and it'll be the like the image of the podcast profile image, basically. But yeah, man, and we'll definitely link to your TikTok channel as well. And is there anything else you want to leave anybody with?
Besides, just be grateful for what you get to do, like I said, whether it be hunting once a year or a full-time job of it, there's always somebody who aspires to dream to be what you are or to get to do what you get to do. So whether, if you think you're not doing good enough or whatever the case may be, there's always that somebody who's aspiring to have what you have or do what you do. So be grateful for what you do get to do. That's kind of something I've been getting to take away more this year as I've gotten kind of older and more into the real world, I guess you would say. It's definitely something I've learned, is to be grateful for what I get to do, not only just in my everyday life, but as far as, hunting goes and stuff like that. Some of the memories I've gotten to make and stories I get to tell now and whatnot. But it's definitely something to look back on, just be grateful for what you have.
Yeah, man. No, I love that. And I think that's a perfect place to leave it. And yeah, everybody make time to be great, or to, I guess, rack and stack what you've got going on in your life, and be grateful for what's going on, because it's going on for a reason. Like you said, there's always somebody probably looking up to you. You don't realize it. So look around more than you look around at what you can be grateful for more than you look around at what you can compare yourself to. And I think you'll be in a good spot in your life.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely kind of the way I've tried seeing it here more recently.
Heck yeah, man. Well, awesome, man. Well, it's been great having you on, Hayden. Congrats again on this awesome buck. You're that guy I'm looking up to right now, by the way. So your words are there for me. I'm still trying to get my first deer out of that, and if I could put myself in your shoes yesterday, I would have. So that's awesome, dude. Congrats on that buck, and thank you for the awesome words, dude. And yeah, Full Draw Kentucky. We'll go make sure people go check that out. And yeah, look forward to having you on here for a turkey episode here this spring.
Alrighty, thank you. Thanks for the support on not only the TikTok, just funny enough, just because I do it for fun, but the support from the deer and whatnot, and the support for letting me get on here and tell my story and listen to some of your stories. Even it's something to experience, and I would definitely be excited to get back on here and tell a story about turkey hunting. It's something I'm looking to look forward to.
Heck yeah, man. Well, we're looking forward to having you on. Well, thanks again, brother, and take care of yourself, and we look forward to having you on here soon.
Alrighty, thank you.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you later. See ya.
See ya.
So there you have it, guys. That was Hayden Crass. Be sure to go check out his page at Full Draw Kentucky. We'll link to that in the show notes. And man, just what an awesome opportunity to shoot a buck out of a saddle. And I can't love enough what Hayden left us with. And that's to be happy with what you have and where you're at in life. You know, we're all given certain opportunities in our lives and our walk with God and our walks just in our daily day-to-day activities, man. Whether it be on the job or the workplace with the kids, whatever it is, God puts opportunities in our path, man, and those are for us. You know, anything outside of that is probably not for you. And his something good there reminds me of 1 Timothy 6:6. Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmless desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. You know, one of the lessons I've been really studying in on, and I've just been kind of getting hit with left and right here over the last several months in my own life, is just envy. I'm doing a lot of studying and thinking on it, and you know, wanting or hoping for something that isn't yours, that someone else has, or scrolling through social media feeds. You know, I'm sitting over here, I haven't like gotten a day yet to get out and go turkey hunting. I want to check a Rio off my bucket list here while we're in Texas, and we got like 4 weeks left till we leave. And I'm sitting over here watching people just smoke turkeys left and right, and you know, I have every opportunity to just be envious of that and get jealous, and it's a hopeless path to just being really, really negative, if I'm being honest, if I let myself do that. Or I can just be ultra happy for everybody else. We actually have Hayden Crass coming on to share a turkey hunt of his that he just dropped in the Praying and Slaying campfire community the other day. And just being grateful for the opportunity I have to be able to help people share their stories is just as important as me wanting to get out there and kill a turkey for myself. And I'm so happy for what I have here and the opportunity God's put out here to get this network put together and share these cool hunting stories and bring these new podcasters into the community as well, and all kinds of really cool stuff, man. So, you know, just remember when you're scrolling through social media feeds, there's always going to be something there that's going to be an easy trigger to envy and something that maybe you desire, maybe you get jealous, maybe you don't feel like someone deserves something as much as you and you don't have this and they have that. But man, that's ultimately just a path to ruin. You know, the ultimate happiness in life is just being content every single day you wake up with whatever God puts in your path that day. Go out, you seek your opportunities, you do the work to achieve your goals, and that's the best you can do. Take your ultimate steps towards that every single day, and as long as you're taking one step at a time to achieve those goals, they'll happen for you, and let God let the rest play out, man. Don't go chasing things or wanting things that, you know, at the end of the day are just going to drag you off your path of happiness, man. It's all about peace in life, and that's the best thing we can hope for, besides our hope in Jesus. So with that, guys, I'm going to let you get back to it. Like I said, thank you so much, Hayden. We actually have an awesome episode coming up, not too far following this one, with a cool hunting story from Hayden, so he's going to be a repeat guest. And Full Draw Kentucky, that's where you can find Hayden Crass on social media. We'll link him in the show notes there. Thanks to our partners, Dead Nuts Outdoors, 2D Targets, Puck Outdoors, their new awesome twist lock storage solution. It's like basically a hockey puck that you store multiple mouth calls in, or they have a really, really cool fishing tackle puck as well. Go check those guys out, puckoutdoors.com, and of course, get yourself a knee bag. If you are a mobile saddle hunter, get yourself a knee bag. It will save your knees. They're handmade by veterans in the United States. And all of the proceeds, when you support those partners and support our network by listening, you are supporting our impact mission, which is called the License to Kill Initiative. And that's where we sponsor hunting licenses and fishing licenses for veterans all across the United States. So with that, guys, go do something awesome for somebody today. Get down on your knees. Tell God how thankful you are for where you're at in life, because that's the ultimate happiness, is finding contentment with where you're at and being happy with where he has you and where he's got you going. And keep praying and slaying.